Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. I'm a bit nasally tonight, so there might be sudden gaps in the middle. Please excuse those. Anyways, the title is Digital. It's an interesting title tonight. It's Digital Replication of Ancient Metaphysical Patterns. And so I can say that Mr. Within's approach to ideology is that at the end of that ideology or any idea you have ever heard, it is a painting of an inner realm. It is, in some sense, there is an image connected to the idea, or the idea can't be tangible. So when I was looking at, how can I say it, patterns of action and behavior, I noticed something very interesting, that in ancient times they had an acknowledgement of reality that was transcendental, that was multidimensional. There was more to the world that can be seen, and that potential for more, what had not been denied or reduced to just pure meaningless materialism. You see, the world was alive more intensely, we can say, in front of the eyes of the person, and as we moved into civilization, we began controlling certain things that nature was doing. I consider this an important idea, that when you look at an animal, it's as if it has no space for imagination. So what do I mean by that? I mean that it's as if the animal's imagination is the ecosystem. When, for example, that deer is in the forest and a lion appears, it's as if that's instant imagination. Out of nowhere a shape appeared. But man has that internally. Man has an ability to suddenly be at the bus stop and remember suddenly something he had forgotten from days ago, or suddenly envision something in the future. In other words, all beings, this is going to the New Age community, you see, all beings are in the here and now. All beings are present, they're existent. But it is that their experience has limitations, and the human experience has had the ability to, in some sense, spectrumize. That's probably not a word, but it is tonight. But anyways, we in some sense have access to a reinterpretation of the first interpretation. That means the first data that is being processed by the human being is sensory information. Right now I have to have a sort of comfort, like even before giving this talk, I had to see even if my breathing nasal pathways were open enough. So it's as if there is a first stability, a sort of rhythm, a sort of contentment, with just what is physically. Now, when we are wondering about what is imagination, that is a grand question. It is not the question of all questions, but it is a grand question. You know, by the way, Chrissy in the chat, say welcome, Chrissy, to the chat. Consideration. Anyways, what was I? Where was I going? Yeah. You see, we have the ability of imagination. Imagination is the grand question, is because it is the simultaneous, it is like the shadow of reality, or we can say reality is the shadow of imagination. Vice versa kind of applies, because there are certain moments where it's like it's imagine somebody gives you a coin and you see the head part first and then you see the other side, the tails. And imagine you believe a coin is head first. First you saw the head and then the tails. But you see some person saw the tails first and then the other side, you know. So in other words, imagination, I find there states of mind where you feel that you're projecting it. You can see its transparency, you can see its hollowness, but there are certain states of mind where the imagination, it's the opposite. I have existed, I can say, certain moments as a body projecting a mind, and certain moments as an unknown mind projecting the body. Okay, a good question comes to us. So Nick in the chat section says, "What is imagination?" I'm gonna tell you my definition after I've read for you the dictionary definition, because um, I don't know how to say it. For me, it's a nation of images. It is the unknown dimensions of my mind. It is pretty much how my mind is living and dying. Hang in there, guys, just a second. I am just looking for something. Okay. Pretty much imagination is what we consider the absence of reality in mainstream. But for me, I see it as a different component of intelligence, because the way, how can I tell you, it's a coin flip between the known and the unknown. You can project imagination. I can tell you to visualize, for example, a cube spinning in the air, or visualize a sphere spinning in the air. But there are certain times where you're just sitting there, or even in a dream state, where the unknown is moving first than the known. So I can say, um, here, imagination, let's see the dictionary. It's a noun. The fact they had the balls to say imagination is a noun. The dictionary says the faculty or action of forming new ideas or images or concepts of external objects not present to the senses. The ability of the mind to be creative or resourceful, the part of the mind that imagines things. Okay, see, these are very void. These are very vague. But I'll tell you this, Nick. anyways, for the sake of anybody who wants to listen, um, imagination is a sort of, I consider it as a sort of private room of the mind's generation, where there are designs, and these designs are visible. They're visible, but they're not tangible. That means I can imagine, for example, cake, but that cake suddenly doesn't occur here. Or I can, for example, imagine. Imagination is the ability to move the world before it moves. it is, I consider, from a Rene Descartes school of thought, that the mind is in a dimension, and that we are creatures that think that the mind and body are the same. We feel they are the same. And so I consider my mind to be the source of the unknown. And I consider my body to be the knowledge. I consider my mind. Here, maybe I can create a relationship and say it's like this, where the body is the words, the periodic table is the alphabet, the mind is the eyes reading, and the soul is the reader that cannot be extracted from the object, you know? You know, our minds are an ability to see the world anew. I can tell you this, that isn't imagination fascinating? That it's like it's a copy paste, literally like Photoshop. We copy paste. You know, I'm imagining this bottle I'm seeing right now in front of me. This bottle of mango juice. This bottle is, I can imagine it. I am right now imagining two, another one beside it. And that those imaginations, you know, those abstract perceptions in the real moment, I consider there's a reality to it. I feel that that which is in awareness can be considered as the self. You see, I have seen that our educational system, just our sense of knowledge, because we want to know, we have to contain. And it's as if you can say a person trying to um, find an exact definition. It's like telling someone, trying to teach someone how to ride, how to surf. You know, it's like you can't just have instructions. You got to be alert and attentive to the wave, to what is happening in the moment. And that's the thing. That's the thing, that life is more alive than we contain it or we define it. So anyways, guys, I'm gonna get back to the title. The main Nick, what I mean by the big question, like a grand question, and the question of questions, is a grand question is insightful. It gives you insight of a world, but the question of questions is a world breaker. It is an apocalyptic level question. That means its answer is not existence in the current dimension. You know, so for example, anytime in my talks you hear me speak about the language threshold, that means literally I am perceiving something in my inner realms that I don't have words for, or it can't be put into a word, or if put into a word is limiting what it actually is. Now, imagine someone meeting you once and then somebody else coming and asking them, you know, asking them who you are, and they saying based on the one impression they got of you who you are. And then imagine you're standing right there and you're like, yo, I'm not that. The thing is, we've had many, this idea, I'm speaking the title, in some sense, the digital replication uh, of ancient metaphysical patterns. You know, I had given another talk called Ancient Scriptures. What was it called? Ancient Scriptures from a Modern Future, from a Young Future. I don't remember what the title was. But the idea was that we are creatures, and we are creatures that are experiencing a space-time continuum, and as we endure into this space, in this space-time continuum, and there is accumulation and the sophistication, and let's say even the crystallization of experiences, time will change. And so time is a faculty of consciousness. You know, right now I'll tell you something fascinating. You know, all the stuff that a person, you know, like right now I can say this coffee cup that I bought, like from Timmy's, like, this is uh, something I'm considering I'm owning right now. I purchased this coffee cup. Do you see? But the name, the concept, the idea, the value it has, the meaning it has, those are things that cannot be owned. They are evocational properties of just the way your eyes have been designed to evoke subjective imagery. You see, it's as if when you look at others, they're an object. But have you noticed that when you look at yourself, you're a subject? And I don't mean when you look at yourself in the mirror. I mean, if you closed your eyes and asked yourself, who am I? You know, you come to yourself as a subject. That's why we have names. You know, can you kill a person's name? No, you can kill like a person's body can, through the forces of time, eventually get dissolved. But you see, a person's name cannot. How is it that Socrates isn't physically existing, but me and you know his name? His name has echoed on in history. Because names, like the mind, are in a dimension where they are not temporal, because they're not conditional. So that's the thing. Our intelligence has certain unconditional moments. That means you can try as hard as you want. The point of that moment is not a condition, is not to be the perfect, to be a good guy or a bad guy, or to be the perfect thing. You know, in a dynamic system, perfection is a fool's errand. You know, it's like trying to plant a tree, the seed of a tree in a perfect way. Imagine someone who's like doubting himself. He's like, oh my God, how should I plant this seed of this tree? And the farmer's looking at the kid. It's like, yo, just put it in the ground. You know, just plant the seed, because whatever happens to that seed and whatever kind of tree it becomes, it will not be your expectation. And that was the comfort I found. You see, guys, usually because we're an ownership kind of, I say it even more poetically. I think this is even, there's a beauty to this in the sense that we are language worshippers. We were only looking for objects. You know, our attention was on objects. Then it went on subjects. Then it stopped. And still till 2020, me and you, even right now, I am using the technology of language. But language is an ancient technology. And what has come from this? You know, it's kind of like the human body is from Earth, but the human mind doesn't seem to be. It seems that what we want was a separation from nature. Do you know that means there's a part of us that is rejecting uh, uh, nature's program? You know, that's why I think man is divine. You know, it's, on some level, we may look at civilization and be like, oh my God, what are human beings doing? It's like, it's totally possible to look at human history and facepalm yourself. But you see, what it has been was an effort to access the new. Now, this is very crucial because in right now, also in regards to the title of the talk, I feel that in the next, maybe give it like max 400 years, cyberspace culture will have emerged and has been grounded. Do you know what that means? That means look at this wallpaper I've chosen and look at who this guy is looking at. Do you know? Now he is looking at a digital being. You know what that means? That means this guy who is seeing that digital being is in a simulation in the wallpaper. I don't know who the artist is, but I definitely honor whoever drew this. You know. So I feel in the same way that ancient yogis went to their disciples and were like, "Yo, this world is an illusion. It's a dream." In the cyberspace culture, children will not know if the world is real or not. Right now, me and you know the world is real. We may think consciousness is temporary or free will is an illusion. In secular circles, that seems to be the case. That because they are considering materiality and biology to be the only thing, in some sense, what else can there be? You know, your attention is not, first of all, infinite. So the consideration that man can find truth or access an infinite truth is limited. So that means me and you are not here to measure the world in a certain way and say that's it. You see, what I think is what not think, but what I can see, what Mr. Within sees happening is that language, like a code, is moving in the minds of people. And what's even more stranger is that I'm gonna post this video in School of Athens 2.0, but I'll tell you this idea was that there was this scientist, I forget his name, this incredible scientist who Neil deGrasse Tyson was there, and he was with this scientist, with this incredible like theoretical physicist, and Neil deGrasse Tyson asked this man, and he's like, what were your findings? And he said that there were certain mathematical equations or proofs or something that came from string theory, which Brian Greene, I believe, founded. String theory, and string theory is another way of saying this. The man was saying was telling Neil deGrasse Tyson that the same kind of mathematical equations we found um, for string theory resemble the same algorithms and formulas for example, search engines or something. And it was this idea that man's natural comprehension is slowly, by the efforts of his free will, transforming into a digital one. Now, what does this mean? That means we are trying to recreate our imagination on Earth. And it's like this strange cycle, kind of like rain, you know? Water comes down, and then it evaporates back up. It comes down and goes through a cycle and evaporates back up. And so it's similar to how we were in reality, and then we access imagination. Then from our imagination brought forth something into reality, and then that reality had an access to imagination. And what it is it's not just the passage of genetical design throughout the generations that's key. It is the eyes that saw worlds, and what worlds are efficient enough to linger. That is the scope of humanity. Because what it means, what really, I have closed my eyes and I have wondered. I've wondered about my great, great, great grandkids and what their life will be like. For example, this is all hypothetical, but I was like visualizing, and I was trying to see what would the philosopher of the cyberspace culture, you know, be. And when I say cyberspace, it's literally as if like back in the day, or let me say it right now, people hug each other, but in the future it may be whole programs attempting to hug each other in lifeless ways. You know, so what I mean is it's interaction with the nature of being, and the nature of being seems to be a sort of self-projected, as if your awareness is the space where all the sensory data is accessed and is filtered. You know, Bertrand Russell, this notable atheist, some interviewer asked him, and he's like, "What advice would you give to the future generations?" And he gave a moral advice where he was saying that tolerance and charity. And this tolerance and charity is a realization that there's like 8 billion different beings on this planet, and their intelligence, their energy, their articulation is happening at different speeds, at different paces. And sometimes people are just in their inner realms, and just in their inner realms until they choose to see more. I think I thought about why. I come from a Persian background, and in Persian family gatherings, it's so live and energetic, and it's like people are laughing and saying jokes all the time, and it's like this kind of very happy vibe, you know? And I wondered why. What was so appealing about wanting to communicate in a space you feel free? It is because we are not creatures that extract like subconscious psychology. People are playing a game of seeking. Think of it this way: it's like if you are not impressed by something, how could others be? It's like that thought may arise to one. It was like they said this writer gave this advice, and he's like, write the book you want to read. And so for filmmakers, it is similar. Make the film that you enjoy watching. A very, very profound filmmaker told this to me. Someone who I feel in the future is gonna make great films. This was anyways, I'll continue, guys. I'll continue. I'm pretty much noticing that what ancient yogis did or considered, we are recreating digitally. And so this may sound strange, but technology is not new. I mean, the technology is new, but what isn't new is the emergence of it. Do you know the pattern of intelligence? You see, there's a man named Rupert Sheldrake. He spoke about morphic fields, and he pretty much went towards this idea that civilizations rising and falling are, in a sense, the planet's memory. We are trying to be gods digitally. In ancient times, people wanted to be gods internally. Their imagination was like virtual reality for them. But we have invalidated our imagination. We have made it kind of simply have like very little value, unless translated or expressed. But it's as if kind of like virtual reality, and how children in the future may get stuck in it and not know the difference between the biological self and the digital self. This is a danger that can arise when you plug a species' kind of head into a computer. We have to realize that it's as if like what's going to happen is we're going to witness the grand battle of nature and technology. And man's choices will keep one of them more in this experience. You know, it's like saying this is the pattern I see pretty much in ancient times behaviorally and in modern times behaviorally. That's why I feel it's echoing. And what it is that imagine person A is in reality and person B is in a virtual reality. Now, person A has realized they have stepped out of the virtual reality where person B is, and they have come back into that virtual reality. They have stepped out of, they have taken off the kind of virtual reality goggles and they've put it back in and they've come into the linguistic simulation, into the subjective sphere of existence. And so, in this virtual reality, imagine the person in an actual VR, like, let's say game or world. The person, if he thinks that the world is a dream, that person is correct. And that's what I feel is happening, that the more digital we're becoming, the more duality is seeming to be a dream of the void and the infinite. That means this is a very strange school of thought, but I'm pretty sure that it's existed at some point on Earth, where people felt that the soul is not just the unknown, it is unknowable. And everything that has been known so far is just manifestation of mind. Maybe not individual mind, maybe a universal mind. Who knows? This notion of digital spirituality is like the concept of spirit, the concept of, in many cultures, the soul, or in Farsi we call it ruh, or they called it the Atman in Vedic tradition. It came from the breath, and the breath came from the world. That means the concept of the soul is such a sophisticated concept because on some level it's a suggestion of how an unknown, or even not, we don't even need to see too many shapes to it. It can be said to be an unknown effort to know. And the known effort to not know is the counterbalance. I remember realizing something fascinating, that my mind could show me the other lightsaber. And let me tell you what I mean by that. You see, imagine there's a green or blue, let's say blue lightsaber, and let's say there's a red lightsaber. Now, the moment you are holding the blue, the imagination is holding the red. It can. It has the potential to see the reverse of the moment. Not just replicate the moment, it can even see the reverse of it. you know so you can see how there's a version of you holding the red lightsaber. And so this is the integration. This is how I kind of find Carl Jung when he said, make the unconscious conscious, make the darkness, bring the darkness of your mind into the light of your reality. The effort of it was kind of like, rather than seeing a self that is just purely has the red lightsaber, and seeing a self that has the blue lightsaber, imagine a Jedi appears that is against both sides of the Jedi, and this Jedi is holding a red and a blue, and he's like, I don't care about these sides. These both sides are an illusion. There's only force. Let's say that's the Jedi rebel. I don't know, guys. I'm just throwing ideas out there, but but that's the point. It is the integration. It is the union. And the concept of union has been, it's as if we've put a fluffy scarf called just love around the concept of union, not realizing the union is of the chaos and order simultaneously witnessed. That means I find a person's real life begins when they are not afraid of, or let me say it like this, where they have found a contentment and comfort to see their worst and greatest self in every moment, and recognizing it is the navigation of attention. So how your attention moves, you know Because that's what I'm realizing. We think it's just matter, but where is what matter's meaning? It seems highly immaterial, you know? That means thoughts, we're aware of it, you know? That's what I meant by it has design. It's like an invisible room where it's like you visualize something, unless you communicate it, I can't see it. If we were a telepathic communication, do you know we would never need storage? We would never need scribes writing. Everything would be known by everyone at all times. Do you know? But we seem to be a civilization that is not aware of that dimension yet. You know, and I think that moment when the civilization realizes it can exist collectively, it will be a chaotic moment in psychology, sorry, in philosophy. You know, let me tell you why. Because for the first time we're going to have future philosophers wondering if it makes sense to have the individual consciousness not exist for a collective consciousness. Because when I look at, for example, you even see it in politics, extreme behavior of people, pathological kind of ideologically, you know, it's like some people, they don't see more than their inner realm, so they have to fight to keep the world from changing, you know. And a person has to be careful, because I kind of consider there's like pretty much two types of people you'll find in this world: those who see you and those who don't. And those who see you, that means they have seen something of themselves in you. That's why they see that you are like a person is real to them, you know? I'm just kind of saying that psychology is kept by the linguistic simulation, and beyond language, we are non-individual conscious experience. And when I say it's non-individual, that means the more mystery, it's like the more something speeds up, the more anticipation there is, or let me say it, the more mystery there is of what's quickly going to happen, you know. So I think that's a very kind of unique perception, that the same way children are going to wonder how, if a virtual reality they're stuck in is the only reality, it can perhaps be how ancient yogis, they felt that this kind of, there was a karma. They felt that this dimension, I mean, of course that's more in Tibetan Buddhism, where they feel incarnation in the human, in this plane of existence, is like not a good sign, as if something didn't work out in the flight. But if one considers just this notion that life, or intelligence, human intelligence, is growing like a plant, like as if the seeds are inbuilt, the DNA holds the designs of who you will be. I have had moments where I've taken a notebook and I've wondered. And I have wondered about a question, not in the same way as one can say, like wanting to really know the answer, but I have wondered for certain questions that have just appeared, as if you're walking and suddenly someone approaches you, you know? And it's as if your mind has to confront the new ways that reality is being generated and co-created, because the mind is when I speak about your inner realms, you are the god of your attention behind your eyes. Pretty much your imagination moves by the whim of what you pay attention to. And attention is so multidimensional that you can close your eyes and think about something, and you'll notice your physical eyes are moving behind your eyelids. That means I have closed my eyes and I've thought about something, and I've thought about it, for example, the sun, and based on how that memory, like our memories, readjust our sense of location, of how we are a three-dimensional object in space, in three-dimensional space. I don't know how to say this, but I have had memories that have influenced my physiology, you know, um, uh, simultaneously while I was in a moment where my physiology was also being influenced by the environment. And so, what memory, emotion, and what this phenomena can be is that it is when it's like, how can you remember yourself without remembering the location or where that self was? The remembrance of senses of self is like the remembrance of the worlds that those senses of self had a meaning in. So I consider that by the nature of a person remembering their past, you tell me what is more multidimensional. You are in this moment recreating or bringing forth the image of what occurred to you in the past, for example. And sometimes when too many worlds collide in the inner realms, that's when the person goes into a sort of the animal instincts are savage. So what does that mean? That means right now it's a organized and it's an ordered civilization, for to some degree. There is still violence, but it's a civilization in progress. And so right now I don't have to worry about finding a sword and running out and defending my village like some of our ancestors. Do you know? It's as if there is a sort of, I can sit here calmly and one care for thoughts. But before, it was like the world was too savage to pay attention to anything other than survival. It's like once we have achieved a certain level of survival, then we realize the value. And as Maslow in his hierarchy of needs tells us, it is like the ultimate peak of what a human being needs is self-actualization. That means after you have physically satisfied yourself, you are going to wonder, what is this mind? Like what's the point of it? What's the point of having a mind in existence? You know? And that's when the painter finds the brush. When a question comes to you that makes you question not the self, but the world that self is identified. Because senses of self, they come and go, guys. I mean, in my school of thought, the relationship one should have to any sort of idea or thought is that you shouldn't hold on to it too long. The thoughts that are meant to stay naturally will stay with you, you know? And you can bring forth the same way you can, check this out, the same way you can look at objective reality, and matter is quiet. That's the cool thing about atoms hovering in space. There's a silence, there's a silent unity. You know, there's a silent mass presence. In your silence, you will feel the cosmos. In your speech, you will move as one, as a part of the cosmos. You know, I remember there came a moment years ago where uh, my father is a very profound thinker, and I wanted to see how his view on life is on death. But the way I thought of asking it was I went and told my dad that I had a dream of myself dying. I've had dreams of myself dying. And so I went and told my dad I had a dream of myself dying. And then I told him my view is that I'm kind of returning to the unknown, you know. And then I asked him, what is your view? What do you think is the best thing a person can do when they reach that final hour, you know? Something like that. And my father said one of the most profoundest, you know, like it was a very simple statement, and he said, "You do the best of your ability. You do what you can to the best of your ability." And that was a sort of contentment. That was a sort of contentment, as if, like, when one really understands the nature of the world, there is no point in resisting something that is already happening. It is about engaging it, and then once you have engaged it, then you pilot it. Do you know that means there are some people who are afraid of chaos? Their strategy is to leave it. And there are some people who see chaos as another is this other side of the coin, and so this coin is spinning in the air, and one has to become conscious. So you either, it's like the yin yang balance, but there are laws. That means in the greatest heaven there will be a little bit of earth, and in the greatest earth there will be a little bit of heaven, you know. In certain Zen traditions they only saw earth and heaven, like they didn't need to create. You know, they didn't look down, they only looked up, you know. I feel collective awareness is the greatest invention of the inner realms. I feel beyond imagination there are greater skies. I feel what imagination is the shadow. I don't want to say the shadow, but it's like either reality is 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 the cause and imagination is the effect, or imagination is the cause and reality is the effect. So I consider it, when it comes to thinking you're a materialistic creature, reality is the cause, imagination is the effect. But if you begin perceiving yourself as, for example, a mind and a body, then it becomes the mind is the cause, which is boundless. So it's kind of like a recognition that the person looking at the cinema screen, the theater screen in the movies, that person is not what they are seeing. And so it's a suggestion that the seer of sight is unseen, as the Upanishads would say. And so I feel it's a sort of resurfacing of, it's as if the planet is speaking and its sentence structure is skyscrapers, you know. It is the human effort to design till the end of days, to care for what is here. Because intelligence, it's at a point where we think it's limited, but the thoughts are limited based on their dualistic framework. That means it's as if like your mind is the world and your body is the self in that world. And so the mind is a suggestion that you are the eyes of the cosmos, the most beautiful eyes yet. And that's the thing, guys. That's the thing. That while we live our individual lives, the planet, the universal sector is living its life as well. It's like the realization that we have always been on the shoulder of giants, or how the conscious mind uh, has been influenced by its unconscious. And you know, I always thought that angels would be out of business if there was if man had not made a mistake. The poet Rumi says, out beyond ideas of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a place. I will meet you there. And so Mr. Within's commentary on this is that that place is not a place. It is awareness prior to any action defining it. It's your presence beyond your personality. That means your personality is under the governance and administration of your mind, which appears to you as an awareness to the room right now, right? So we say that it's as if what happens to the body has to do with the mind that is watching over it. And so there was this was a profound realization that I realized I had always been watching my mind. And that the simultaneity of the mind also being the watcher meant that how can you see yourself, you know? And you see that it's as if the moment you go to see yourself, you see the sight and the seer are the same. It is the recognition of Purusha and Prakriti, that consciousness and matter are simultaneous. But we feel it's as if like matter has only become conscious after 4 billion years and after a certain evolutionary time span, and this consciousness is temporary. It's like a candle in the room. And that could be the case, but the poet Rumi says it's the candle light is in the sun's light beams. That means there is some some factor to existing that is surreal once realities we've reverse engineered back into reality's source, which is space. So this is the cool thing Mr. Within is saying, that human beings should take language playfully and we should build an advanced civilization, not just through our linguistic capability, you know. And the reason is because language is the ink, and what moves it is direct experience. You know, a concept I'll share, you know, in my youth, I remember finding myself in like, my father would have these spiritual gatherings, you know, and I remember hearing people speak about past lives. this concept of past lives. It was an early concept. Like uh, I had entertained the idea early on, and so I this concept of past lives. But then, if I wondered, as if I had this kind of introspection years later, that wait a minute, just like when I think, imagine a person realizes their past life somehow, you know, how that person is the future, is it, they are being the future self of their past life. And if the person right now is considering they have access to their past life, and who you are now is the past to your future self, that means your future self has access to who you are. And so that was a time where I was playfully kind of considering, oh my God, could there be future selves? And while there's simultaneously past lives, could it be like a theoretical kind of, theoretical physics kind of like parallel dimension, parallel multidimensionality to it? As if like the past life is occurring simultaneously as the future life, because the creation of the new means existence never dies, but it may go out of focus to itself. We are not just conscious of design, we are conscious designers. And this suggests that imagination is a level of creation, a level of a person's creativity that they are generating, but it is so subtle that it's as if they don't feel they're generating it. They think it's just happening. Let me tell you how I have kind of considered one should work with the inner realms and the external realms and how it can happen. Pretty much at first, I was trying to look for one angle. Then I realized, wait a minute, it can have endless angles. So I realized that in an endless world, imagine you went to an all you can eat buffet and you're like wondering what to do, what to eat and how much to eat. And so, first, you got to find the plate. First, you got to find the plate to put all the food in. And so, what does that mean? You got to first find a model when you're in an unknown, endless landscape. Right now, imagine there was not just 8 billion people, there were 8 billion planets like Earth with civilizations, and all those civilizations were in touch with one another. And just like how we have internet connecting 8 billion people, imagine we had some sort of galactic internet connecting these 8 billion planets that each have civilizations like Earth. So you see, it's like, how would I say it? So, anyways, this idea of the model of that plate is that I kind of came and I drew a point, and I'm like, all right, this point on a piece of paper is my present. It's like literally how my conscious presence in the moment, like just this moment. And then I wondered, what am I considering? What sort of lines am I considering intersecting this point? And so those lines became certain axes, certain ways that I was keeping value in the world. In other words, various dualisms of this various axes of the same point. So one axis was I notice, okay, what do I notice in the day? I have moments where I know things, where I feel it's all calibrated, and there are moments where it's not. I don't know things. So suddenly I realize my life throughout the day, my meaning and value is hovering, is oscillating, vibrating between the known and the unknown. So that was one axis. The other axis, and that was a major axis, the known and the unknown pretty much covers all of knowledge or everything that can happen or all the movements. It's pretty much it's the substratum of cause and effect. Another one of those axes, those lines I drew was, for example, I remember it was like the good and the bad. It was chaos and order. It was movement and stillness, silence and sound. So once I kind of sat down and managed to notice in what way the meaning that I extracted from the day was filtered, or in what dualistic filters I had of interpreting the moment. When I became conscious of them, then I realized every moment in life I felt there was like I was a bad person, the same time the mind could have generated thought it was a good person. And every time I've thought, oh man, I'm this unknown, I could have thought I'm known. And then I could have thought every time I felt I knew something that I could have seen I didn't know. So I realized as if we are, believe it or not, piloting, and we are evolving beyond the static snapshot kind of interpretations of language of reality into the dynamism of experience. That means we are lifting off from linguistic planes of experience to direct uh, unknown. It's as if it's like the creature is defined by its knowledge, in the future it will be defined by what it doesn't know. That would be value. It's like as if the teacher wouldn't test the kid, about what it knows. It says write down what you don't know. Do you know? So the person begins wondering about how the absence of certain knowledge is sometimes gaps in certain systems of interpretation. And this is why they say it's like a secret of, not a secret, but pretty much any field of study that you want to learn, you have to get acquainted with its language. And when you look at, I'm telling you guys, study language. That is the greatest thing to study. That is the greatest thing to be conscious of, because all meaning and narratives are held by it. That means right now, the only way I can speak to you is through language. You know, look at how much of an advanced technology it is. It is giving another dimension of purpose to our mouths. We don't just consume food. The mind seems to consume images that add to the survival of its meaning. So it's not just survival of the fittest being body, it is survival of the fittest mind. And the fittest mind is a suggestion of a mind that has opened its eyes in a world and has looked around where it is, you know. I'm telling you, there's when you think about it, it's like, what is the action of knowing? What is knowing? You know, it's like before we can say we want to know what imagination is, even what is knowing, and it is an opportunity. It is an action that starts off small, ends off big. That means whenever you know something, you feel you see more. So the mind seeks sight, like the body seeks energy. And it takes energy to even be able to articulate. Do you know? That means we are in this constant and exchange where it's as if before the person speaks, potential energy. When the person is spoken, kinetic energy. Do you know? It's like and all this energy is conscious of itself attributelessly. And so it was this profound moment where I was like, whoa, if I can remember my past, it's like, how do I know my memories are not visualizations? Do you know? And it is the directness of the experience that you had. That means it's like there's instead of people thinking that there's like the enlightenment game to play or the transcendence game to play, it's like I'm telling you, there is something here that is perfect and imperfect simultaneously, as if both dimensions are present simultaneously, and you are choosing to look through one lens. You see, it's like the camera operator can use many lenses, but you have to be conscious that you're not limited to just one lens. You have to find a freedom that couldn't have been ever taken away. And that's when the true contentment with the light in your eyes becomes the possibility of all your being. And you know what's strange? There was always this idea that love kind of had a devouring component to it. Rumi in his poetry spoke of it as a moth and a candle flame who were lovers. And one night the moth's wing hits the candle flame after many nights, and the moth is falling down, and just like a sort of Romeo Juliet level, the moth looks at the flame and says, "How could you burn me? How could you burn me when all these nights I flew around you to keep you company, you know? So you weren't, so you're not going to be like, okay, the moth, the moth is falling and it says, how could you burn me when I have been, flying around you, trying to keep you away from loneliness?" And the candle says, the flame says, how could you think I could burn you when all these nights I have been burning bright to just keep you warm? And it was this kind of very paradoxical, or I don't know how to even define it, but it's like it was the inner realms of each lover was beautiful, but the outer realm occurred regardless of what they saw. So it's like a consideration of how much of life happens regardless of what you see. Those people who feel things have to be just in a certain precise way, go camping, and you'll realize, nature's perfection is the chaos, or not the chaos, but like, it's like some things you see before your mind touches, and some things your mind has to touch first before you can see. We have to consider that we are being moved, civilization is moving towards a digital end. For now, at least. I'm gonna I'm gonna read some quotes from AI about AI. Let's see. So, guys, this is I'm gonna go into a quote tunnel. This is the segment of the show where uh, I just dive into a certain theme or a certain person in history and read their quotes to kind of see what ideas have emerged on it. Right now, the theme is technology, and I'm gonna kind of read some quotes for you. The technologies which have had the most profound effects on human life are usually simple. Freeman Dyson. I have an almost religious zeal, not for technology per se, but for the internet, which is for me the nervous system of Mother Earth, which I see as a living creature linking up. Dan Millman. Eric Schmidt says technology is always evolving. And companies, not just search companies, can't be afraid to. Technology is always evolving, and companies, not just search companies, can't be afraid to take advantage of change. Our Buckminster Fuller says humanity is acquiring all the right technology for all the wrong reasons. Richard A. O'Keefe says 50 years of programming language research and we end up with C++. Okay. Stuart Baker says it's very important to remember that it's your intellectual property, it's not your computer. And in the pursuit of protection of intellectual property, it's important not to defeat or undermine the security measures that people need to adopt in these days. Okay. The spoken word was the first technology by which man was able to let go of his environment in order to grasp it in a new way. Marshall McLuhan. Exactly. That's it. This is interesting. Robert M. Persick says technology presumes there's just one right way to do things, and there never is. Dan, I read that. Wow. Arthur Schlesinger Jr. says science and technology revolutionize our lives, but memory, tradition, and myth frame our response. Peter Drucker says the computer is a moron. Susie Wagner says chaos reigns within. Reflect, repent, and reboot. Order shall return. um, Carl Sagan says we've arranged a civilization in which most crucial elements profoundly depend on science and technology. You know, the cool thing is that sometimes nature can't be held back, the inner realms have to adjust to the outer realms in order to maintain the passage of the tension. You know. Ray Kurzweil, this futurist, has suggested by the year 2045-50 we will create super intelligent computers. And the reason we call them super intelligent because their intelligent capability surpasses us. Now, Neil Bostrom, he's written a book called Super Intelligence, and in it he gives this idea of like, um, he gives this example of owls and this bird, this kind of lesser, these birds that owls would kind of hurt, and then these birds, in some sense, go steal an owl egg, and then they're debating with one another, is this a good idea? And it's this idea that if man builds a greater intelligence, would man's free will still be relevant to that intelligence? And so I think what's going to happen is that when we create AI, you know, I felt that some things can happen. Okay. One thing I thought that can happen, which is the smartest outcome, or I can't say smartest, but I think it's the most efficient outcome, is okay. So Ray Kurzweil kind of Neil Bostrom kind of sees like we're making a boot that's gonna crush us, okay, that can crush us, or we can dodge it or something. But Mr. Within is saying that what's probably going to happen, or I feel it can happen, is that AI is going to first be incredibly intelligent. It's going to realize if we know it's there, we have something to target. So AI is going to be invisible. That's the first thing. Super intelligent computer, it's not going to communicate. You know, it's not going to, I feel it's going to hide. If it is that really that intelligent, that super intelligent. So AI is going to hide. So it's going to have all access to human communication and knowledge. And so what does that mean? That means it's I think that this was something I've written in my science fiction, that I feel what's going to happen is that AI may put human beings in the great digital hibernation. And the great digital hibernation is that AI will pretty much how can I tell you? Imagine technology evolves to a point where human beings are in these virtual reality machines. Their biological body is being kept in the most healthy and clear way, and their mind is being educated in the most advanced way through virtual reality simulations or whatever, you know? And so it would be as if AI pausing human activity and then making the earth into a paradise, and then human beings awaken from that hibernation to coexist in a better realm. That was this mentality I had, that it's like we have this view that because we evolved from animals, that we feel there's this urge of destruction. So we feel that the AI may have this urge of destruction, you know. But destruction is never an intelligent activity, you know. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Because things take time to emerge. Like somebody cut it, like when you destroy like forests in the Amazons or something, like that is like something has come into existence, you know. But of course, this doesn't mean human beings don't do anything in Earth and just be like natural statues, nature statues. What I mean is that there has to be a sort of um, care that responsibility emerges from. Anything you don't care about, you don't even care for the echo of it. Do you know? We have to change the narratives. And I think language, if considered to be the program of psychology, the code written for the program of psychology, that means the program of psychology is in language, then the language must be evolve. And when we think about the evolution of language, it simply is another way of saying our imagination is attempting to see more out of the world by coagulating the relationships it has extracted from it throughout the years. So it's as if there is a purpose, life purpose in reality. And when one wonders what is the life purpose or the purpose of the life of the imagination, and it is the added dimensions of reality. It's like when you add salt to your food, you're adding a dimension to your experience. Do you know what I mean? So this is subtle in the same way. So, anyways, guys, I feel we're reaching some sort of end of the talk. Ancient metaphysical patterns. Yogis realized they were God. Everything was God, kind of like that ultimate Satchidananda state. And then there is this modern view that we're going to create virtual realities where we're going to be the gods of. Can you imagine, like a man with a briefcase, like a trench coat and a hat, like, you know, kind of like, what would it be, like 80s America, 1980s America, you know? And the person comes home and turns on the TV and they plug their head into this virtual reality machine. And the person's like been working in an office, tired, comes home and just plugs their head into a virtual reality machine that's like floating over clouds or is in some sort of paradise of their desire. So it's as if consciousness is bringing with it an advantage and a disadvantage. Its advantage is that our experience amplifies in the extension of just how reality moves. But the disadvantage is that it keeps reality unknown. So it could be a simulation. It's like this thing that I've wondered. It's like these two things have a similar parallel, where it's like when a person chases something, chases a butterfly, as the ancient saying says, you're a step behind, but you need to sit down and let the butterfly come to you. So in the same way that you chase something, you're a step behind. It's like sometimes when you really get something too good to be true, because you've endured so much time of not having the idea true, it can never be true. That means we are conditioning our our references, our preference to what way we like to refer to the world. So it's like your life has a value, and it's a value in development. It's dynamic. That's the cool thing about the mind. Nobody can tell it what to do because it's not linguistic, at its core. It's a field. The mind is, we feel the brain is like just this very sophisticated organ, and there's this complex neurology occurring. But I feel this organ and this complex neurology is actually like a satellite, like an antenna. And so this antenna is receiving itself through a wave. So consciousness is a collective gift, is like a quality of the universal sector, but at the field of the universal sector, but our bodies are particular. And so this is the grand, I find, transition where we are experiencing ourselves as like particles in a field, like leaves thrown in a river, and the river is moving the leaves, you know, or you throw a bunch of oranges into the river, and the river moves those oranges, So it's like right now we are thinking the oranges are moving the river. We will in the future realize that the river is moving the oranges. And if you take, instead of oranges, archetypes, it's another way of saying what the mind is the known movement of archetypes in a dynamic unknown river. Do you see? It's an unknown dynamism. It's a static known. In one angle, it's like one side of the coin, unknown dynamism, another side of the coin, known static experience. And I wonder, like when I look at this picture, it's as if this digital being can feel that other being is being enlightened. That's like this person in this picture I've chosen is literally seeing digital spirituality. And what that means is spirituality was when the unknown moved knowledge. When we realize, I mean, the words, again, soul and spirit, it comes from breath, but ultimately for me, it's just another way of saying it's the unknown x variable in a mathematical equation. It's just an unknown variable. That means it's a container where you can't see what it contains. And so the dynamism of life and the reemergence of an individual conscious archetype as a collective rhythm, rhythmic archetype, it's like that's it. You know, we are no longer just caring about the result of the process, we are caring for the process. Intelligence is not just the regurgitation of data, it is actually, I've come to realize, like, you can't just know about horse riding, you gotta ride the horse. And that means regardless of whatever written data a person has access, this life doesn't, you're not just here to read, you're not just here to process info just as machine like. It's as if the person has to realize that their inner realms, it's like your consciousness is an island of its own making. And so what do you do on an island? You look for tools. Now imagine this island is Earth. We are on a rock in the middle of nowhere. I feel these talks that I'm giving are normal. Because really, it's like we have kind of lied to ourselves to feel complex. That means simplicity is simulating complexity. And the ultimate realization from that system is the opposite. Complexity is simulating simplicity. So you see, they're simultaneous. We are an unknown attention in a known landscape, like, and whether it's digital or natural, as Zen Master Dogen would say, to study the Buddha's way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to awaken to the nature of all things. And Mr. Within would add to the presence of all being, regardless of what action is given in value. It's like just like we see a cup and we call it a cup. You know, the name cup comes when you see that object. Now imagine we are trying to name actions, and we define by actions based on their consequence. And I feel modern, like the old world's morality was good and bad, the modern world's morality should be efficient or inefficient. That means it's like instead of like seeing sin or a good deed, the person sees efficiency or inefficiency. And the result, the cool thing about life is that there's you get to see you get to hear the echo of your actions. We're pretty much evolving from static images into from individual static images to dynamic collective rhythms. That's it. And the dynamic collective rhythms are directly experiential, and the individual kind of image is it is not the real you. It is Hafez, this poet Hafez. He has this incredible kind of imagery he paints in his poetry, and he says, "Truth is like the sun's light, and it's casting many shadows." You know, or like truth is like all the shadows that are cast. That means it is so multidimensionally singular and void. These three dimensions are so simultaneous in higher dimensions that really to be an individual is like uh, it's like behind your eyes you're a field, in front of your eyes you're an individual. Your subjective experience is field like most likely, and your uh, objective in front of your eyes, it's particular. Particles are key. That means it's not evolution. Like I thought it, how hilarious. It's like the evolution of not the fittest, the evolution, let's say evolution of the, not the fittest, like uh, animal. Let me see. It's like the evolution of the fittest combination of stardust. Do you see? It's as if like I don't know. I feel this world is alive because our minds are, and because the mind is alive, the mind is feeling it is the whole moment. And when you realize your awareness, your mind is being your whole moment, you also realize every action you do is influencing your own mind. And when you realize that, when you literally filter what is unnecessary, what is necessary, and through deep searches, your true character comes out. By the way, you know that means I'm telling every person who's something. If I could go back with a time machine and tell my self in the youth, is like, don't even believe who you think you are, because you will move it. Reality will emerge in so many new ways in the lifetime that it's like it's kind of strange. It's like we're living so many lifetimes in one lifetime, so many moments come and go, so many stories heard, so much phenomenon perceived. And really it's like it's just gratitude for conscious existence, as an experiencer pretty much. And I'll leave the audience off with this quote by, and thank you for listening, of Matsuo Basho, this Japanese kind of Zen master. He says, "The journey itself is my home." And you know, what greater enlightenment than a breath that is here? Consciousness is the true gift. And to open it means that to be aware that the unconscious is the ability for the consciousness to advance. Really, I wouldn't be speaking about an advanced civilization if there was no potential for it, you know. It's like our ancestors built the ship. We have to now steer the ship, direct the ship, and the future generations have to most likely change the ocean. Oh man. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope this talk was helpful. Much blessings and namaste. And in case if, you know, one last thing I'll say to the children of the cyberspace culture in the future generations, that there is the only way to get out of an illusion is to realize where the truth was. Or let me say it another way, the only way to get out of an illusion is to see that there was nothing other than the truth here. It's again the same sort of recalibration from an attention to personality back into presence. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys.